Before we begin, make sure you're comfortably tucked in. Dim the lights. Let your thoughts slow to a leisurely shuffle. Tonight, we journey back to a less than golden age, a time when rats were abundant. Medical knowledge was questionable, and personal space was more of a philosophical concept than a reality. Yes, we're talking about the Black Death. But don't worry, this isn't a thriller. It's a quiet walk through dusty history, and you are encouraged, no invited, to fall gently asleep at any point. Now open your eyes and imagine it is spring of 1348. You are lying on a wool-stuffed mattress, which is a generous term for what is essentially a cloth sack filled with yesterday's barn sweepings. Your bed is situated in the corner of a one-room cottage, which you share with your extended family, a cat named Blister, and at least one chicken who has taken a firm stand against the outdoors. The smell is complex, a curious medley of soot-damp wool hay, something boiling, and the general aroma of human life without plumbing. Outside your shuttered window, birds chirp, as if unaware of the rising tide of doom sweeping across the continent. Or perhaps they know and simply don't care. You rise slowly, not because you're lazy, but because everything hurts a little. You're 27 years old, which makes you something of an elder statesman in your village. Your knees pop like poorly made hinges, and your back has begun to adopt a curve reminiscent of a decorative walking stick. Still, you rise. The fire is down to embers. Someone has eaten the last of the porridge. You chew a piece of yesterday's bread with the enthusiasm of a man eating parchment. This is your world, your home, your life. And unbeknownst to you, it's about to get considerably more interesting. Word has spread from the port towns. Whispers of sickness, swift and strange. People speak of it in low tones, like they're discussing a neighbor's scandalous goat. You've heard the tales, people falling ill in the morning and dead by supper. Buboes large, angry swellings appearing under arms around necks, fevers that burn fast and high, and the rats, always the rats. But none of that seems real yet. Not in your quiet little village where the biggest scandal last week was someone putting garlic in the communal stew without warning the widow Tamsin. You think of her now, her face so full of offense, it nearly matched the beetroot she accidentally bit into. The truth is, you are blissfully ignorant. But that won't last. Over the next days, and through the following stages, you'll discover what it meant to survive in a world that was rapidly coming undone. Not through might or magic, but through the deeply underrated arts of staying out of trouble, knowing which door not to knock on, and washing your hands a bit more than your neighbors. But for now, take a breath. Let the scratchy blanket tuck around your shoulders. Maybe adjust the straw pillow so it no longer smells like onions and regret. The day has only just begun, and already there's something peculiar in the air. Perhaps it's the smoke from the neighbor's chimney. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it's history quietly preparing to go terribly, boringly wrong. You step outside just after breakfast, though. Breakfast might be too generous a term for half a crust of dry rye bread shared with your youngest cousin, and whatever was left in the pot from yesterday's stew, which may or may not have contained actual meat. The morning air is damp, clinging to your wool tunic like a needy goose. You tug it tighter around your shoulders, step over a sleepy chicken, and head toward the center of the village. The dirt path is familiar underfoot, though it's softened from last night's rain, squelching faintly with each step. The cottage roofs lean at angles that defy geometry, and smoke curls lazily from a few chimneys. You pass by old Farmer Bryn, who nods at you, but says nothing, which is not unusual. Bryn has been in a state of silent suspicion since the turnip theft of last autumn. You still suspect it was the goat. At the village square, a small gathering has formed, not large enough to be alarming, but certainly large enough to inspire mild curiosity. Villagers stand in uneven clusters, talking quietly, their voices hushed but insistent. You catch snatches of conversation from the port, they said, and he had the fever by nightfall, and yellow around the eyes. That's how you know. You join the edge of the crowd and squint toward the center. There beside the old well, and under the faded banner of St. Crispin, stands a man you've never seen before. He's tall, thin, and wears a yellow hood, a shade so sour it could curdle cream. His face is sunken, his eyes dark-ringed and hollow, like he hasn't slept since the last eclipse. He speaks with the kind of tired authority that makes people stop fidgeting. It began in the harbor, he says. A ship from the south. Rats got off first. Then the crew, some of them already coughing blood. By morning, the apothecary was full. By evening, the graveyard. No one breathes. Even the goat that usually disrupts these gatherings with her ongoing war against fence posts has gone quiet. And now, he continues. They're closing the roads. Someone gasps. Someone else drops a basket of turnips. You think of your uncle who traveled to the port 3 days ago to sell dried herbs and thin ale. He hasn't returned. A pit forms in your stomach, or maybe it's the bread. The man in the yellow hood goes on. He explains that he's a kind of messenger, or perhaps a clerk, or possibly just a very determined gossip with official parchment. It's hard to say. What matters is this: the sickness moves quickly. Those who feel fine in the morning may be fevered by sundown, and if the swellings come under the arms near the groin, it's often too late. He speaks of miasmas, unbalanced humors, and something about toads, though you're not quite clear if the toads are a cause or a cure. The villagers murmur among themselves. You hear words like quarantine and herbal poultice and move to the hills. You look around and notice how many people are touching their faces, rubbing their eyes, adjusting scarves. You take a step back without meaning to. Then another. The square seems suddenly too small. The air feels thicker. Someone sneezes. You turn to go, but are stopped by a familiar voice. It's old Nan, who once nursed you through a particularly nasty winter. Cough with honeyed onion broth and her terrifying glare. Don't you be running. Now? She says, gripping your arm with surprising strength. Running brings the fever faster. You're not sure if that's medically sound, but you nod anyway. Nan leads you to her cottage, a short walk away and slightly uphill. She mutters as she walks mostly to herself, mostly in Latin, which she speaks when she's either angry or making poultices. Inside her cottage, the air smells strongly of garlic rosemary and something metallic, possibly blood, though you decide not to ask. She busies herself with jars and cloths, preparing something in a cracked bowl. Boil this with cider vinegar, she says. Breathe the steam. Sleep near onions. Hang rosemary at the door. Don't share cups. You nod again. It seems a good time to become very agreeable. Nan talks as she works about the last great fever that took half the village about the year the river froze sur, and people tried to skate in wooden clogs, and about her old cat Thomas, who once survived a house fire, and then immediately fell into a well. Her stories are oddly comforting in their mundanity. Outside, the wind picks up. A bell chimes, though no one can quite remember why it rings at noon, if it is noon. Time has become a loose suggestion. You help Nan hang bundles of herbs around the door. Lavender, thyme, wormwood. They smell sharp and earthy, like something alive, but recently scolded. Later, as dusk settles, with its usual gray indifference, you find yourself back in your family's cottage. The fire has been rekindled. Your cousin has a new blister. The chicken is asleep on someone's pillow. You sit near the hearth and rub your hands together, thinking of the yellow-hooded man, of the silent crowd, of your uncle's absence, and of how quiet everything suddenly seems. Outside, a cart passes, wheels creaking like an old man's joints. It leaves a trail of muddy water and vague unease. You stare into the fire, but the warmth feels distant, and you can't help but wonder if perhaps the air is changing, if something unseen is already drifting in, carried on the same breeze that once smelled only of peat smoke and wet hay. You think of Nan's instructions: boil the herbs, avoid the crowds, sleep near onions. You nod to yourself, though no one is watching, and slowly lie down on your blanket, the straw shifting beneath you with a whisper, like dry leaves. The candle sputters, someone coughs, and somewhere not far at all, a rat sneezes. Morning arrives without much ceremony. The weak sunlight slips through the wooden slats of your cottage, casting pale strips across the dusty floor. You wake slowly, a bit more aware of each creaking joint than you'd like to admit. The chicken has relocated to your feet sometime during the night, possibly seeking warmth or asserting dominance. Either way, you shuffle it aside gently and rise, brushing straw from your tunic. Outside, the air has turned oddly still, as if the wind itself is pausing to listen. You remember the words of the yellow-hooded man, the fear in the square, and old Nan's insistence on boiling herbs before breakfast. You have not yet developed a taste for vinegar steam, but you try. The sharp scent burns your nostrils and makes your eyes water, which Nan says is proof that it's working. She also insists that placing a dried toad on your windowsill will ward off the sickness. She gives you one, wrapped in cloth, like a very unfortunate gift, and you set it there with the care one usually reserves for breakable heirlooms. Your cousin eyes it suspiciously. The toad naturally offers no comment. By midday, the village feels different. It's not that people are gone, they're still there in ones and twos, darting between homes and avoiding the center. But something has shifted. There's no shouting, no gossiping, not even the usual arguments about pig ownership or the proper use of nettles. Instead, a hush has settled over everything, a kind of collective breath-holding. You notice that more homes have herbs strung over their doors, some even more elaborate than Nan's. One particularly bold neighbor has fashioned a garland of garlic bulbs so large it could be seen from the next county. It's impressive, if not entirely subtle. As you pass, she gives you a nod, then returns to scrubbing her doorstep with what looks like wine-soaked cloth. You briefly wonder if the wine might be put to better use, but you say nothing. In strange times, people do strange things. That afternoon, your uncle's cart returns. But he is not driving it. The horse trudges along slowly, unaccompanied reins, dragging in the dirt. The cart is empty. Someone gasps, and then, as if agreed upon silently, no one speaks of it again. The cart is led away, stabled, cleaned. Your aunt sits down without a word and begins sewing a small pouch. She fills it with rosemary sage and a coin touched by a priest long dead. When she finishes, she ties it to your wrist. A charm, she says, for protection. The cloth is scratchy, the coin cold. You nod again. It seems to be your new specialty. That evening, you help Nan crush more herbs, boil more water, scatter more ashes across the threshold. She teaches you to make a salve of mint and vinegar for the forehead and a syrup of elderberry for strength. You suspect these potions may do more to comfort than cure. But comfort has its own quiet power. At one point, Nan looks at you over her cauldron and says, "If you keep your hands clean, your heart light, and your nose full of onions, you might just live through this." You nod, not because you believe her entirely, but because it is easier than asking what else to do. You go home later than usual. The stars are out, faint pinpricks through a cloudy sky. A crow is perched on the roof beam above your door, watching with the unblinking stare of something that knows more than it should. Crows have always made you nervous. There are stories of, course, crows as omens, crows as messengers, crows as witches in disguise. You try not to think about it as you duck inside. The toad is still there, dried and slightly tilted. Your cousin has named it Gregor, which somehow makes it worse. Your family is quieter now. Even the children, usually unstoppable in their chaotic joy, have become subdued. They play with less noise, sleep, with more movement, waking often, and muttering in their dreams. One of them has developed a cough, soft but persistent. Your mother gives him elderflower syrup and says it's just the chill from the floor. You don't argue. You help reinforce the door with extra planks, hang another bundle of herbs, and say your prayers to saints whose names you don't quite remember. You sleep with your boots nearby, just in case you need to run, though you're not sure where you'd go. The next morning, there's a scratching at the door. Not a knock, not the sound of someone politely asking entrance, but a slow, dragging scrape. You freeze. So does your brother. Even the chicken stops pecking at your cousin's shoe. The sound repeats low and steady. Eventually, your father opens the door with a pitchfork in one hand and a holy medallion in the other. It's not a plague victim, nor a ghost, nor a desperate neighbor. It's a cat, a large, scruffy, one-eared tom, with patches of fur missing, and eyes like dirty marbles. It walks in as though invited curls up beside the hearth and falls asleep. No one questions it. Someone mutters something about cats eating rats, and that's enough logic for today. Outside, the crow is still watching, and this time it is not alone. 2 more perch on the roof, black silhouettes against the morning fog. You stare at them longer than necessary. They stare back. The silence between you is heavy. You consider throwing a stone, but decide against it. There are superstitions, after all. One does not insult crows without consequence. By afternoon, a notice appears on the door of the church. It's hastily written and slightly crooked. You can't read the Latin, but someone explains that it says no gatherings, no mass, and no funerals within the church walls. The priest has taken to shouting blessings from his upper window, waving a large cross, and occasionally a ladle for emphasis. He's also begun sprinkling the street with holy water mixed with vinegar. The children find this wildly entertaining. You are less convinced. A group of villagers begin talking about fleeing to the woods, setting up temporary camps far from others. Others scoff, insisting the sickness is a punishment from heaven and must be endured where one's sins were committed. You remain undecided, though the woods sound increasingly appealing. That night, the cat wakes you. It's pacing the room, ears twitching, tail stiff. The crows are cawing outside, softly at first, then louder, then all at once. You rise, slowly, careful not to wake the others. You step outside. The air is thick and damp. The crows scatter as you appear, but not far. They land again on the fence, waiting, watching. In the distance, a low bell rings. Not the village bell, a handbell traveling. The sound of someone moving between homes. You squint through the mist and see a shape in the road, moving slowly, carrying something over one shoulder. The shape pauses, straightens, and begins to turn toward you. You take one step back, heart fluttering like a trapped sparrow in your chest, and then the mist thickens, swallowing everything in sight. The mist doesn't lift. It lingers like an uninvited guest, thick and damp, curling around your ankles, as if trying to decide whether or not to climb. The figure on the road is gone now, or perhaps simply hidden, but the sound of the handbell continues, though fainter than before. You stand there a long time, long enough for the fog to soak into your sleeves and the cold to remind you that you have poorly lined boots. The crows have dispersed, leaving behind only a few faint feathers and a sensation of being mildly judged. You retreat back into the cottage, closing the door slowly, as though loud sounds might draw something nearer. Inside, the fire has burned low again, the embers a dull red eye in the dark. You shuffle toward it and stir the ashes until it sighs with reluctant warmth. The cat, still nameless, by family decree, sits on the windowsill, ears, perked eyes, fixed on something outside. You don't look. You've had enough mysterious shapes and fog-drenched figures for one morning. Later that day, a man comes to the village gate. He wears a leather apron and carries a satchel of tools, which would not be remarkable, except that no one has seen him before. And he speaks in short, clipped sentences, like a person who prefers not to waste words on strangers. He says he's a joiner from 2 villages over, sent to board up the homes of the sick. It's a new custom, apparently encouraged by one of the bishops, who heard of it from a physician who got the idea from a merchant who had once traveled to the east. Stories spread faster than the plague, now twisting and turning like smoke in a bottle. The joiner, his name is Hal, or at least that's what he tells. Your father takes measurements, asks a few polite questions, and nails a crude plank across the door of the home next to yours. The family inside doesn't answer. You don't know if that's because they're not there or because they're too afraid to respond. Hal marks the door with a smear of red paste made from crushed berries and wine. It drips slowly, like a wound that refuses to clot. After he leaves, the village becomes even quieter. Children are kept indoors. Markets are closed. Bread is left outside on doorsteps purchased with coins soaked in vinegar. You hear whispers of travelers stopped at the village edge and turned away with sticks. One woman tried to sneak in by pretending to be someone's cousin from 4 valleys over. She was found out when she didn't know the local name for boiled turnips. She now sits alone by the old mill, surrounded by a circle of salt. No one will step across. You watch her sometimes. She hums a song you almost recognize something about a goose and a stolen spoon. You hum it too when no one is listening. That evening, you help your mother prepare a weak soup made from root vegetables, dried herbs, and the last of the barley. It tastes better than you expect, or maybe you're just grateful for the warmth. Your cousin's cough has worsened, though he insists he's fine. He sweats through the night, tossing and mumbling about sheep and stars, and something he insists lives in the rafters. Your mother gives him more syrup. Your father sharpens a blade without looking up. You sit beside the fire and pretend not to worry. The cat curls around your ankles, warm and slightly judgmental. At dawn, you wake to find the door open. Not wide, just enough to feel wrong. A breeze slips through the crack, bringing with it a scent of wet earth and wood smoke. You rise carefully, step past the sleeping forms of your siblings and cousins, and close the door again, fastening it with the latch. You're sure you locked it before bed. You're mostly sure. The toad is still on the windowsill, though now it faces the opposite direction. The cat is nowhere to be seen. You whisper a few words to a saint whose name might have been Ethelred, or possibly Gerald. It's hard to remember. You offer a quick apology in case you got it wrong. Outside, another home has been boarded. You didn't hear it happen. No one seems to know when it was done. A new red mark has joined the others, glistening in the morning light. The berries must have been fresh. Someone wonders aloud whether this is the work of Hal or of someone else. You don't see him anywhere. No one does. A man from the far end of the village claims Hal never existed, that he's a ghost or a sign or a very efficient hallucination. The theory is debated for the better part of an hour until someone sneezes and the crowd disperses like leaves in the wind. You spend the afternoon chopping firewood with your brother. It's quiet work, the kind that dulls thought without entirely silencing it. You try not to look at the smoke curling from homes that are no longer answered from within. You try not to count how many doors have been sealed. Your hands blister. Your arms ache. You keep chopping. The pile grows. Your brother doesn't speak, and neither do you. There is nothing new to say. Just repetitions of older, safer words like stack and split and pass the axe. When the sun begins to drop, a noise stirs near the edge of the woods. Not an animal, not quite a person either. You peer through the trees and glimpse a figure moving slowly, wrapped in a heavy cloak. They carry something under one arm, a bundle, large and uneven. You watch for several minutes, but they do not come closer. The figure disappears behind a copse of fir trees and doesn't re-emerge. You decide not to mention it to anyone. Not yet. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was everything. That night, the cat returns. It carries a mouse in its mouth, which it drops ceremoniously at the foot of your straw pallet. You nod in appreciation, unsure of the etiquette. The cat blinks once, turns, and walks away, tail flicking like a punctuation mark. Outside, the mist creeps in again, thinner this time, but insistent. You lie awake, listening to the sounds of your family sleeping, the rasp of breath, the shuffle of blankets, the occasional muttered word. You count them once, twice, 3 times, just to be certain. You reach for the talisman your aunt gave you and grip it until your knuckles ache. Just as your eyes begin to close, you hear a knock, not at your door, but faint and far away, the kind of sound you almost dream. 3 knocks, then silence, then 1 more. You lie perfectly still, eyes wide in the half-dark, listening to the silence after that last knock, waiting for it to repeat, to explain itself, to resolve into something logical. A traveler looking for shelter, a neighbor in need, the wind playing tricks. But it doesn't come again. The fire has burned down to its bones, leaving only a faint warmth that barely reaches the soles of your feet through the thinning layer of straw. You shift slowly, making as little noise as possible, though no one else stirs. It's as if they've all settled into a deeper kind of sleep, one untouched by strange sounds or fog-thick air. You sit up, the talisman in your hand, still pressed into your palm, its edges now imprinting into your skin, like the memory of a coin pressed against time. The knocking didn't sound close. It was far off, muffled, perhaps, from one of the sealed homes, though it had felt direct. You consider waking your father, but the thought passes quickly. He would not appreciate being roused over sounds only you seem to notice. And besides, something in you whispers that the silence after the knock is part of the message that whatever it was, it did not come with company or comfort. By morning, the fog has receded, leaving dew on everything and an odd smell in the air, like boiled leather and old smoke. The village feels soft around the edges, as if the buildings are leaning in just a little more than usual. You step outside, partly out of habit, partly to reassure yourself that the world is still there and hasn't slid sideways in the night. The grass is wet beneath your feet, and the sky is a pale yellow-gray, like butter, left too long in a pewter bowl. Across the square, someone is already tending to a fire, the smoke curling upward in an unusually tight spiral, forming a knot in the air before unraveling slowly. You stare at it longer than makes sense. Smoke isn't supposed to behave like that. It should drift, scatter, fade. But this smoke lingers hovering, as if uncertain whether to rise or fall. Old Nan meets you halfway down the lane. She's bundled in no fewer than 5 shawls, each one a different shade of grayish-brown, and she carries a basket slung over one arm that smells of fennel dried moss and something pickled. She eyes you carefully, then thrusts the basket toward you. The garlic needs to go higher, she says, without introduction. Your lintel's too low. Might as well invite the sickness in for tea. You nod, take the basket, and follow her back to your cottage. She talks as she walks, muttering more to herself than to you. But you catch fragments. It doesn't knock unless it's looking. Saw it before years ago. Doors don't hold it, not always. You don't ask what it is. You're not sure you want to know. Instead, you replace the herbs above the door, tying the new bundle with a piece of string Nan insists was once part of a monk's robe. She gives the toad a small nod of approval, then looks at the cat, now lounging beside the hearth, like a creature entirely unimpressed by curses, omens, or ecclesiastical string. Later that day, another notice goes up on the church wall, nailed hastily and slightly crooked. This one is shorter, more urgent. No gatherings, no trade, no passage beyond the bridge without writ or witness. Someone reads it aloud in a clear voice that carries farther than it should. A few villagers nod. Most pretend not to hear. The bridge lies east, a short walk beyond the barley fields and the half-collapsed watchtower. You've been there once or twice, mostly to throw rocks into the river and argue about who could spit the farthest. Now it's guarded, not by soldiers, but by two men from the village, wrapped in layers and holding spears that might once have been used to turn hay or herd pigs. They look uncomfortable with their new authority, unsure whether they're protecting the village or trapping it. Your cousin's cough continues. It's deeper, now wetter. He still insists it's nothing, but your mother has begun separating his bedding and placing onion slices near his pillow. Nan recommends a poultice made of mustard seed ash and something she won't name. Your aunt begins humming old songs under her breath. Funeral tunes repurposed as lullabies. The fire never quite goes out anymore. Someone is always feeding it, stoking it, watching it. You sleep in shorter bursts, waking often ears, straining for more knocks, for footsteps, for that handbell in the distance. One evening, a dog howls. Not a short, sharp bark, but a long, trembling sound that rises and breaks like a crack in the air. You don't recognize the dog. No one in the village claims it. It howls once more, then disappears. The next morning, the home near the well is found with its door unsealed. The boards have been pried off nails scattered like teeth. Inside, there is nothing. No bodies, no furniture, just dust, and a faint mark on the wall, shaped like a handprint, but too long, too narrow, and facing the wrong direction. The priest sees it and promptly refuses to enter. He calls for candles and chants, and a boy is sent running to fetch more vinegar. Word spreads quickly, and fear takes root like ivy on old stone. People begin staying indoors more strictly. Bread is left at thresholds with no words exchanged. Windows are shuttered during daylight, and at night only 1 or 2 lanterns burn. The cat, once indifferent, now prowls constantly, pausing to hiss at shadows and corners that appear empty. Nan visits less often, and when she does, she stays only at the door, pressing bundles of herbs into your hands and refusing to cross the threshold. Your cousin no longer speaks. He stares at the ceiling and murmurs in his sleep. The mark on his neck is faint, like a bruise from a dream, but it spreads slowly, a purple line creeping like spilled ink. Your mother cries quietly when she thinks no one can hear. Your father sharpens the knife again, though he no longer pretends it's for anything other than preparation. You wonder how many families in how many cottages are having the same thoughts, making the same quiet choices. You wake once more before dawn, the light outside your window, dim and colorless. The cat is gone again. The hearth is cold. Your cousin breathes in small, sharp gasps. You move to check on him, but pause. Outside, somewhere distant but clear, the handbell rings again. Once, twice, then a third time. You step to the window and peer through a crack in the shutter. The village is asleep, but down by the bridge, something moves. A figure wrapped in fabric, taller than anyone you know, carrying a lantern that gives off no light. You blink. It's still there. You blink again. It's closer. You don't move. You hardly breathe. Your eyes stay fixed on the figure by the bridge, tall, shrouded, impossibly still. The lantern it holds gives off nothing. No flicker, no glow, not even the faintest ember. And yet you see it, as clear as you see your own hand gripping the edge of the shutter. The figure does not sway in the wind, and the wind itself seems to hush as it approaches, like the village is holding its breath alongside you. You glance at the sky, still caught in that early gray-blue stretch before dawn, the clouds hanging low like forgotten laundry. The figure shifts, not walking exactly, but arriving closer, now standing at the edge of the barley field. The same place you once lay in summer, staring at clouds and arguing over who would catch the first toad of the season. You remember that moment because it was ordinary warm, filled with the laughter of people who still speak. Now that place feels thin, like the veil between what was and what should never be. The bell rings again. Once, a space of silence. Then again. Then nothing. You count heartbeats, unsure when you started. The figure turns slowly, so slowly, and begins to retreat, not back toward the bridge, but along the tree line, circling the village, as if drawing a shape only it can see. By sunrise, the figure is gone. You step outside, because not stepping outside would mean letting fear claim something else. And you feel there's little left it hasn't already claimed. The ground is wet, but not from dew, Wash. Dark and sticky lines, the path like something half-burned and quickly buried. You follow it toward the edge of the fields until it disappears beneath a pile of leaves that were not there the day before. The crows are back. 4 of them now. They perch in a line on the church roof, quiet, watching. You resist the urge to shoo them, partly because you doubt they'd go, partly because it feels disrespectful to disturb anything that might understand more than you. Your cousin dies just after the noon bell, though no one hears it ring. His breath slows, then stops like a candle allowed to flicker out. Your mother weeps softly, as if afraid of waking him. Your father carries the body wrapped in a sheet to the space behind the house where the soil has already been turned once this season. You do not ask who else lies there. You do not need to. That night, the fire stays unlit. No one has the strength or the will to tend it. You sit on the cold floor, with the cat curled around your legs, both of you pretending not to notice the chill. Outside, footsteps pass. Once, then again. Not running, not stealthy, just walking. You do not open the door. You do not need to. The toad on the windowsill has fallen over. Its face now points inward. In the morning, your brother tells you he saw someone standing in the barley field. Not the same figure from before, but a girl in a white dress, hair hanging wet and tangled around her shoulders. She was humming. He can't remember the tune. Your father slaps him for lying. Your brother does not flinch. He only nods, turns, and goes outside to split more wood. You feel the echo of the slap in your own cheek, but more than that, you feel the weight of what wasn't said. You believe your brother, and that frightens you more than if he were simply lying. Old Nan comes again earlier than usual, her basket replaced by a bundle wrapped in cloth so dark it swallows the sunlight. She won't come inside. She calls you to the threshold and places the bundle in your arms. It is warm, slightly pulsing, and you realize slowly that it holds a chicken, alive, feathered, calm. Keep it in the house, she says. it'll take the bad air. You open your mouth to protest, to ask how or why, or even if she's serious. But she's already walking away, her steps soft and soundless on the dirt. The chicken blinks at you with the steady indifference of livestock, long resigned to the strangeness of human behavior. That evening, the smoke returns. Not from your chimney, not from anyone's that you can see, but from somewhere beyond the trees, thick and black and rising in slow spirals, like it's being poured from a cracked pot in the sky. It smells of burning cloth and green wood and something beneath that you don't name. People begin to pray more openly now, in groups of 2 or 3, kneeling at doorways or beside empty fire pits. The priest no longer comes out. His window stays shuttered, though you sometimes hear him shouting Latin phrases at irregular intervals, as if arguing with the air. Your mother places bowls of vinegar water on every windowsill. Your aunt begins reciting the names of every saint she can recall, including several that might be invented. You say nothing. You sleep with the chicken next to you, now its warmth more reassuring than you expect. During the night, you dream of the girl your brother saw, though you've never seen her yourself. In the dream, she walks through the fields with a sack over one shoulder, dropping coins into the soil. Wherever they land, the ground turns black, and flowers bloom instantly. Dark, waxy things with too many petals, and a smell like spoiled honey. You follow her, but she never looks back. When she stops, it's at the edge of the bridge, where the figure with the lantern waits. She places the sack at his feet and turns to dust. You wake with your mouth tasting of metal and your hands covered in a zero gray powder that vanishes when touched. You don't tell anyone. Not about the dream. Not about the figure. Not about the girl. Some truths seem too heavy to speak aloud, as if doing so might give them permission to enter. Instead, you clean the hearth. You feed the chicken. You hang a fresh bundle of thyme over the door. You pretend the talisman still works, even though the coin has gone missing, and the thread around your wrist now unravels on its own. The cat won't go near the hearth anymore. It stares at the door tail, twitching, as if something outside is humming just below the frequency of human hearing. The next day, another home is sealed. This time, it's done quietly, with no joiner in sight. The boards are rough, uneven, as though nailed in haste. A red mark appears beside it, not painted this time, but carved directly into the wood. 3 lines, 1 crooked, 1 too long, 1 nearly invisible. You trace them with your eyes, memorizing their shape without meaning to. Your hand tingles where the talisman used to sit. The crows have moved again, now clustered on the well beaks open, though no sound comes out. That night, you see a glow in the woods, faint, flickering. The lantern again, perhaps, or something like it. You follow it, not with your feet, but with your breath, your attention, your thoughts. It moves through the trees without disturbing a single branch. It stops at the edge of the barley. You don't know how you know that, but you do. You sit by the window, waiting. You tell yourself you will not fall asleep, but you do. And when you wake, the chicken is gone, the door is unlatched, and the talisman string lies curled on the floor, like something that wriggled once, and then gave up. You sit up too quickly, your head swimming with sleep, still clinging to the edges of your thoughts, like the last bits of mist that refuse to leave the valley. The morning light is pale and cold, and the room feels emptier than it should. The chicken once nestled beside you like an odd, feathery companion is gone. Not outside, no clucking, no scratching at the straw, no warm presence hovering near the hearth, just gone, as if it never existed. You search for a trace, some feather, a bit of feed left scattered, but the space is clean unnaturally, so like something swept it away with careful, deliberate hands. The door is unlatched, swinging just slightly in the morning breeze, its slow rhythm tapping the frame with the soft persistence of a distant drum. You rise, legs unsteady, and shut it, fully latching it again, more out of instinct than belief that it will matter. On the floor, where the talisman once sat, coiled like a resting snake, is now only the bare imprint of dust and thread. A suggestion of something that once offered protection, though clearly it had changed its mind. You touch your wrist. It feels strangely warm. Outside the village is even quieter than before. The silence has thickened into something you can feel pressing against your skin. People no longer speak when they pass one another, not even in whispers. They nod, perhaps, or lower their eyes. The red-marked houses have grown in number. Some now display not only boards across the doors, but also bundles of herbs burned to ash, tied with black string or smeared with wax. No one asks who does it. The boards appear in the night, and by morning, a home is sealed, its inhabitants unseen. You look at the well where the crows had once gathered. They are gone now, replaced by a ring of stones no one claims to have placed. A small bowl of water rests inside the circle, undisturbed, as if waiting. You find old Nan standing at the edge of the woods, arms folded, lips moving in a rhythm that doesn't quite match any prayer, you know. She doesn't turn when you approach. Her gaze is fixed on a spot between two tall oaks where the trees grow too close together, their trunks almost touching, like gossiping aunts. Something came through, she says, without greeting. Not a sickness. Not just that. You want to ask what she means, but the words dry out before reaching your tongue. She continues softer. Some places thin themselves, stretch wrong. People think they're safe in their cottages and churches, but the world doesn't always agree to our borders. She finally turns to look at you. That chicken was a gift, not a charm. You should have watched it better. You blink. She shrugs. They always leave when they're finished. That night, no one lights fires. A wind has picked up, not harsh, but constant, like a long exhale that never pauses. It creeps through shutters and under doors, lifting corners of blankets, shifting ashes in hearths. Your family huddles close together, wrapped in everything that can be wrapped, though the cold is not biting. It's gentle, but persistent, the kind that whispers under your skin and stays there. Your mother watches the floor. Your father holds the fire poker in both hands like a spear. Your brother sharpens a bit of bone into a point. You don't ask why. You sit by the window again, though the shutters are shut tight, and you try to feel where the night is heavier. Somewhere beyond the village, a sound begins. Not a bell this time, but something jufter, a scraping, a dragging, like cloth pulled over stones. It moves in a circle, or so it seems, tracing the edge of the village like a ribbon drawn around a parcel, not to wrap it, but to keep it from unwrapping itself. The sound continues for hours, sometimes fading, sometimes growing louder, but always returning. When it stops just before dawn, the silence that follows feels enormous, too large to fit in your ears. You sleep sitting up your back to the wall, your eyes half open. You do not dream. In the morning, there's a ring of straw in the center of the square, neatly laid, not scattered, forming a perfect circle large enough to hold 6 people standing shoulder to shoulder. No one admits to placing it. No one dares to step inside. A boy tries, dares himself forward, but his mother grabs him back so sharply he falls, and she hurries him home without a word. The ring remains all day untouched. A few children throw stones at it from a distance. The stones disappear inside, but no sound follows. No one volunteers to retrieve them. You check on the sealed homes. The red marks are older now, cracked and faded. One of them has been scratched through, replaced with a different mark, 3 vertical lines, crossed at an angle, like a crooked ladder, or a tally no one finished counting. You run your fingers near it, but stop before touching. It hums faintly, a feeling more than a sound, like a pressure behind the eyes. Your hand tingles again. You think of the figure with the lantern, the girl with the sack of coins, the crows that used to watch and no longer bother. Something is shifting, not fast, but steadily, like a hill sliding 1 grain at a time until the road below disappears. Old Nan doesn't come again. You find her cottage empty, the hearth cold, the herbs wilted on the windowsill. The toad she kept near her door has been split clean down the center, a dried petal resting between its halves. You leave without taking anything. On the way home, you notice a new crow on your roof, just one, head tilted, silent. It doesn't move when you approach. It doesn't move when you speak. You don't ask it questions. That evening, your brother breaks the silence. He says he saw the glow again, not in the woods this time, but in the barley field, where the scarecrow used to stand. The scarecrow is gone. No one moved it. No one knows who built it to begin with. He says something stood there instead, taller than a man with long arms that never quite stayed still, even when the air was calm. He didn't wait to see more. Your father says he should have shouted. Your brother says he did. No one heard. You sleep with your shoes on now. Not because you plan to run, but because the ground has begun to feel less horror under your feet when you step out before dawn. It shifts slightly, like breathing. Your mother leaves coins at the threshold. Your aunt ties new herbs around every bedpost. Your cousin begins drawing circles on the floor with charcoal, whispering names none of you recognize. You don't stop him. The straw ring in the square is still there, though someone has placed a bowl of milk at its center. It has not spilled. It has not spoiled. It has not been touched. At least, not by anything you can see. You wake before the sun again. Not because of a noise this time, but because of a feeling. A thin thread pulling gently at your ribs, like something unseen, reminding you. It still knows where you are. You sit up slowly, your breath puffing slightly in the chill. The air inside the cottage is stale and still, as though it hasn't moved in hours, and the straw beneath you crunches louder than usual, as if every piece has grown resentful overnight. Everyone else remains asleep, or at least still. Your brother mumbles something in his sleep, a long string of sounds that might once have been words, and your mother turns over, clutching a bundle of dried rosemary like it's the last coin in a beggar's bowl. You stand and tiptoe toward the door boots, already laced, and unlatch it without making a sound. The crow on the roof is gone, but a feather rests on the threshold, thick and glossy, as if it had only just been left there. You step over it carefully, not out of superstition, but because it seems like the kind of thing you shouldn't disturb. Outside, the village is silent in that new way again, not just the quiet of early morning, but the hush of a place holding its breath. The straw circle still sits at the center of the square, and the bowl of milk remains untouched, though the milk itself now looks thinner, more translucent, as if it's been strained through fog. You approach slowly, not because you mean to step inside, but because you can't help yourself. You stop just short of the ring's edge. The straw lies perfectly flat, undisturbed by wind or animals, or the curious feet of children. No dustu rests on it. No shadows fall across it. It might as well be painted on the earth, except it isn't. You can smell it, dry, grassy, and just faintly singed. The milk in the bowl ripples once, though there's no breeze, and you take a step back, heart suddenly aware of itself in your chest. A woman stands near the bakery, which hasn't produced bread in over a week. She watches you, her arms crossed tightly, not out of suspicion, but something else, maybe warning. You nod at her. She does not nod back. She turns and walks into her home without speaking. You stare at the closed door for a long moment, then turn back to the straw, only to find the bowl now empty. You hadn't looked away long. You hadn't heard a sound. But the milk is gone, not spilled, not soured, just not there. Later that day, a boy is found near the old well. Not a child exactly, maybe 10 or 11, old enough to know better than to wander, but not old enough to stop himself. He's unharmed, but silent. His eyes are wide, not with fear exactly, but with the kind of understanding people shouldn't carry at that age. He's brought to the church, where the priest finally unlocks the door to let them in. The boy won't speak, but he scratches at the wooden pew with his nails until someone stops him. When they pull him away, they see the shape he was making. It isn't a word, not one anyone recognizes, but the marks resemble the same 3-line shape carved into the sealed door near the well. The priest begins to pray louder after that. His chanting echoes down the street, uneven, frantic. He rings the old bell by hand, even though it hasn't been used in years. No one tells him to stop. That night, your family sits in a circle. Your father doesn't speak. Your mother tries to hum an old lullaby, but forgets the words. Your cousin lights a candle and places it inside a small dish of water. The flame bends sideways and stays that way. You all watch it for a long time. Eventually, someone begins to talk about the woods, about leaving, about how maybe this is the kind of thing you can outwalk if you move far enough and fast enough. Your aunt says the sickness can travel in your breath, in your clothes, in your shadow. Your brother says the sickness isn't what it used to be. Your father looks at the door and says nothing. In the early hours, you wake again to a sound. This one, real. A rustling, like something crawling across the roof, slow and deliberate. You hold your breath. You listen. It doesn't stop. After a while, it's joined by another sound, low and distant, the humming of a tune you almost remember, the same one your brother mentioned the girl in the white dress humming it in the barley. You don't look out the window. You lie perfectly still and listen until the sound fades, which it does not do all at once, but piece by piece, like each note is being unstitched from the air. When the sun rises, a new thing has appeared. In the far field where the soil was once just rows of dirt and frost, there's now a hollow, a wide, circular depression, as though something heavy rested there overnight and then vanished without leaving tracks. The grass at its center has withered not from fire or frost, but as though it gave up entirely. A few villagers gather to look, but no one enters. Someone says it's just a trick of the rain. Someone else says it's a sign to go. A third mutters something about waiting for the 13th mark. No one asks what that means. You find yourself at the ring of straw again before nightfall. The bowl is back. The milk is full once more. You don't remember seeing anyone place it there. The straw looks slightly disturbed now, but only just, as if someone stood there a moment too long, or something shifted its weight before stepping back out. The air hums softly, not a sound, but a vibration, low and constant, like the ground itself is whispering just out of reach. You think about stepping inside, not to test it, not out of bravery, just to know. But your hand moves before your foot does, reaching out, unthinking, to the edge of the circle. And as your fingers brush the straw, your vision wavers. Not blackness, not dizziness, but a doubling, like the village splits for a breath, becomes two places stacked on top of each other, both real, both wrong. You pull your hand back. The feeling passes. The circle remains. The bowl remains. You walk home, slowly passing by homes that now keep candles in every window, even though the wax is running low. You don't see the crow until it lands in front of your door, drops something from its beak, and flies off again. It's a coin, the same kind that once sat in your talisman, but this one is warm, too warm, and it smells faintly of milk. You stand at the doorstep for a long time, the coin resting in your palm like a small, deliberate question. It's heavier than it should be, or perhaps your hand is simply tired of holding things it doesn't understand. The warmth of it pulses faintly, not with heat, but something else, like the last heartbeat of a fire just before the ashes, forget it, ever burned. The scent is unmistakable milk left too long near heat sweet at first, then turning sour at the edges. You consider throwing it into the fire, or maybe into the straw circle at the square's center, but you do neither. Instead, you tuck it into your pouch beside the bit of string from the old talisman and a button you've never had use for. You tell yourself it's just a coin. The wind picks up slightly as you step inside, curling under the door as if to follow. No one else notices. Your mother sits by the hearth, braiding strips of cloth into lengths of rope she won't name. Your cousin is scratching faint shapes into the wooden floor with a piece of broken pottery. Your brother sits near the window, holding a long stick of charred wood, as if it might still be useful. The cat has returned, but keeps its distance, perched atop the cabinet, like a sentry whose loyalties remain unspoken. You sit near the hearth, the coin still pressing its warmth against your side, and listen to the sounds of a home that's learned to speak mostly in silences. Later that evening, the wind shifts again. It blows not just through the village, but around it, circling insistent, carrying with it the smell of dry soil and wet iron. You step outside the others, too weary or wary to follow, and notice something strange in the dirt road just beyond your home. A line. Thin, shallow, traced in fine gray dust that wasn't there this morning. It runs straight through the village, as though drawn by a hand that didn't lift until it was done, and it curves just slightly as it approaches the straw circle, then veers off again toward the barley fields. You kneel beside it and touch it lightly. The dust is dry, but sticks to your fingertips like oil. It smells faintly of smoke and something else, milk again, but older, more sour, almost bitter. You wipe your hands on your tunic and follow the line a few steps, not far, just to see where it goes. It continues past the well around the bakery, behind the empty blacksmith's shed, and then disappears beneath the roots of a fallen tree you don't remember falling. The air around it feels colder than it should, not chilling, just thinner. You turn back before you mean to. Your feet carry you faster than your mind agrees to. When you return to your door, the feather is gone, and the crow on the roof stares down at you like it expected better. The next morning, the priest stops shouting. His window is open again, but no sound comes from within. A few villagers gather beneath it, uncertain whether this is a blessing or something less optimistic. One man knocks on the door. It creaks open slowly, just enough to see the edge of a candle and the shape of a handprint on the wall beside the altar, long-fingered, narrow, angled oddly. No one goes in. The man who knocked swears he felt something watching him from behind the door, though he didn't see it. They leave food on the step and retreat, crossing themselves more times than usual. At midday, the sky darkens, though no storm follows. The light shifts to a color you can't quite name, gray, but tinged with brown or yellow, the color of bruised fruit or old parchment. Shadows stretch longer than they should, even though the sun hasn't moved. The straw circle begins to hum again, that low, almost not there, vibration in the air. The bowl is gone now, replaced with a small pile of pebbles, each one smooth and dry, and arranged in a spiral that turns the wrong direction. You don't know how you know it's wrong. You just do. A girl walks near it, one of the Miller children, and when she passes too close, her braid lifts slightly, as though caught in a breeze that no one else feels. She runs home after that. No one scolds her. You wonder if the spiral will still be there tomorrow. That night, your brother tells you he's had the dream again. The girl in the field, the sack of coins, the lantern that glows with no flame. But this time, the figure with the lantern speaks, not with words, but with gestures slow and deliberate, pointing toward the village, then toward the sky, then tracing a shape in the air, 3 lines slanted. He says it felt like a warning, or maybe a list. You all sit in silence after that, trying to decide which would be worse. As the fire burns lower, you feel the urge to look at the coin again. You take it out quietly, holding it near the embers. The warmth is stronger now, not pulsing anymore, but steady, like a heartbeat found its rhythm. You tilt it in the light and see a faint mark etched on one side, 3 lines, just like the ones your brother described. You don't remember them being there before. You turn it over. The other side is blank, perfectly smooth. Your cousin, watching from across the room, murmurs, "It's the first." You ask him what he means, but he only shrugs and returns to scratching shapes into the wood. The cat watches you closely now. It doesn't blink. The dust line returns the next morning. Not where it was before. A new one thinner, stretching from the edge of the well to the church steps, passing through the straw circle without disturbing it. The pebbles are gone, replaced by a handful of dried leaves, arranged in the same spiral, spinning in the same wrong direction. You follow the line for a while alone. It leads to the base of the old watchtower, long abandoned, its stones crumbling and moss-covered. The door hangs loose, barely clinging to its hinges. You hesitate, but something urges you forward, a whisper, maybe, or just the memory of your own footsteps. Inside, the air is colder than it should be. You hear nothing but your breath and the faint sound of dripping water. In the center of the room, someone or something has drawn a large shape on the floor in ash. A circle, a triangle, a line through the middle. You feel it before you see it, the warmth of the coin pulsing through your pouch, matching the rhythm of your heart, or maybe the other way around. You take one step closer, then another, and just as your foot crosses the edge of the drawn shape, something stirs in the corner. You turn slowly, breath caught, and see nothing. But the shape of the dust moves. The ash scatters, just slightly, and then a voice, low, distant, not quite human, says your name. You don't answer, not because you're being brave or clever, but because your mouth has gone dry, and your tongue feels like it belongs to someone else entirely. The voice didn't echo, didn't bounce or carry, like voices do in stone towers. It simply existed closer than you expected, too close, as if it hadn't traveled through space at all, but instead uncurled directly inside your ears. You step back, one careful inch at a time, your boot scraping softly against the old floor. The ash at your feet shifts again, but there's no wind. Your hand goes to your pouch, the coin still pulsing warm against your fingertips, though its rhythm has changed. Slower now, measured, like it's listening. The corner where the sound came from remains dark, though the narrow window above spills a narrow shaft of light across the stones. You squint, trying to see what's just beyond the glow, but the air there is wrong. Not shadow, exactly. Not emptiness, either, but something that doesn't belong to your way of seeing. It feels thick, like fabric soaked in something heavy, and it moves without moving. You take another step back, and this time your foot brushes something. A small object, firm but light. You glance down and see a second coin nestled just at the edge of the ash symbol. identical to yours, except for one thing etched into its surface is not the 3 lines, but the spiral. Backward. Wrong. You crouch slowly and pick it up, careful not to disturb the ash too much. The warmth in this coin is different. Cold, in fact. Not icy or dead, just vacant. A sort of absence that makes your skin prickle. The coin smells faintly of rust and root cellars. You slip it into your pouch beside the other, though they do not rest well together. You can feel it, their pulses not syncing, each holding its own rhythm, like 2 arguments happening at once. The voice doesn't return, and you don't linger. You back away from the circle, keeping your eyes on the shifting darkness, and then slip through the doorway and out into the light. Outside, the sky has changed again. Not darker, not brighter, just different, thinner, maybe like the distance between clouds and rooftops has shrunk slightly while you weren't watching. The dust line that led you here has faded. In its place is a new trail, narrower marked, not in dust this time, but in tiny indentations, as though something with very small, very precise feet passed that way. You don't follow it. Not yet. When you return to the square, the straw circle has changed again. Not in form, but in feeling. The center now contains a smooth stone, dark gray, perfectly round, no bigger than your palm. No one touches it. A man from the edge of the village stands nearby, watching it with narrowed eyes. You've seen him before, though you've never spoken. He carries a small blade in his boot and walks with a limp that doesn't slow him down. He says nothing, just nods to you once, and then turns away. You nod back, unsure why. At home, your brother has carved a new symbol into the door frame. 3 lines again, but one now bent at the top, like a hook or a crooked question mark. He won't say why. Your cousin has stopped drawing on the floor. Instead, he stacks small rocks on the windowsill, balancing them in ways that should not work, 5 high, 6 high one on top of the other, like birds preparing to take flight. Your mother burns something unfamiliar in the hearth. It smells like crushed shells and vinegar. Your father sharpens the kitchen knife with more intensity than usual. The cat is gone again. You don't ask. That night, you dream. Not of the girl, or the lantern, or even the spiral. This time, you dream of the tower. You see yourself inside it, standing still, surrounded by the ash symbol. The walls whisper not words, but the scraping sound of thoughts too heavy to be spoken. The tower stretches impossibly tall, and yet you know you are at its peak. Something moves below you, climbing slowly, not on stairs, but through the very stones themselves, shifting the walls as it goes. You try to shout, but your mouth won't open. You wake just before it reaches the room. Your breath comes fast, heart rattling against your ribs, the heat of the first coin now nearly burning through your pouch. You pull it out in the darkness, and it glows faintly, only visible in the corner of your vision, never directly. You clutch it tighter. The second coin, the cold one, feels heavier now. You do not take it out. You do not sleep again. At dawn, the ground beneath the well collapses slightly. A hole appears shallow, but wide enough to see that something lies below. Not water, not rock, just more dust. Darker than the surface dust, thicker, rising like smoke that forgot how to float. No one approaches. A rope is dropped in. It doesn't touch the bottom. A child tosses in a pebble. There is no sound, just the faintest tug of air, as if the whole had exhaled. The child is pulled away, scolded, but no one truly raises their voice. Fear has made them all soft-spoken. You go back to the tower. You don't know why, only that the warmth in your coin grows stronger as you near it. The air feels tighter around the place, as if the space itself is bracing. You step inside and find the ash symbol still there, though something has been added. A line of small stones leading from the edge of the circle toward the back wall. At the end of that line, another coin. You pick it up. This one bears both the spiral and the 3 lines, one on each side. It's neither hot nor cold. It simply is. You hold all 3 in your palm, and for a moment the tower feels balanced. Then the coin in your pouch turns sharply hot, then cold, and you hear your name again. Not whispered this time, not from the corner, from the walls. All of them, spoken not in menace, but certainty. The way a bell rings or a candle burns. You turn slowly. There is nothing behind you, and yet you feel the weight of being watched, not from one place, but from all of them. You step back, and your foot strikes something solid where there was only air before. You look down. The spiral has rearranged itself. Not drawn this time, but carved deep, precise, and incomplete. Waiting. You stare at the carved spiral beneath your feet, newly etched into the stone, as though some careful hand had worked overnight without tools or sound. The lines are sharp, precise, and yet imperfect in a way that feels deliberate, like a sentence left unfinished, or a door left open, just wide enough to wonder if it should be closed. The stone around it bears no dust now, no trace of the ash that once framed the symbol, and the rest of the tower feels suspended, as if the moment itself is too fragile to continue. The air is different inside, not colder, not warmer, just held. You kneel beside the spiral and trace your fingers near, but not on its edges. The warmth in your pouch returns with a low thrum that matches no beat you recognize, not a heartbeat, not a bell toll, but something older, stranger, like the rhythm of breath held too long. You glance at the walls, half expecting another whisper, but they remain silent, though that silence is full of listening. When you rise, the 3 coins weigh heavier in your pocket, as if they are drawing something toward themselves, or drawing you toward something else. You leave the tower quietly, not because you fear being heard, but because it feels right to exit softly. Outside, the light has changed again, slightly more golden, but dulled, like light remembered rather than experienced. The village looks unchanged, but you sense the shift beneath its skin. Children no longer run at all. The crows do not return to the well. A new line of dust now connects the straw circle in the square to the tower's entrance, like a trail of breadcrumbs drawn by a finger dipped in something old. You follow it for a while, not because you choose to, but because not doing so feels like the louder decision. When you reach the square, you find the circle has been disturbed. Not broken, no, the straw still lies neatly, but something has stepped within it, not once, but several times, and not in confusion, but in a deliberate pattern. The footprints form a new spiral, mirroring the one you saw in the tower. And in the center now rests something new, a cloth folded tightly and tied with a string, made of hair, gray, long human. You do not touch it. No one does. The baker's wife stands nearby, arms folded, eyes red, not from tears, but from lack of sleep. She says nothing when you glance her way. She's holding something in her hand, another coin, you think, but she keeps it hidden in her sleeve. The well at the edge of the village is now covered hastily, so with a wooden plank and stones, as though someone tried to bury it, but gave up midway. You notice 3 small piles of soil near the edge, each with a stone resting atop smooth and slightly cracked. That night, your brother leaves the house without speaking. You follow him because the alternative is to sit inside and pretend you won't. He walks with purpose, though slower than usual, heading straight for the fields where the barley has long since withered. The air out here tastes metallic, and your boots kick up dust that never quite settles. In the middle of the field where the scarecrow once stood, and now stands, no more, he stops. He reaches into his coat and pulls out something you hadn't seen before a fourth coin. This one is darker than the rest, with a surface that seems to drink the light rather than reflect it. He holds it for a long time before dropping it to the earth. When it lands, there is no sound, only a tremor you feel through your soles. A moment later, the coin is gone. Not buried, not blown away. Gone as though the ground itself consumed it without appetite or struggle. Your brother does not speak. He turns and walks back home. You follow him again, but more slowly this time. The field behind you no longer feels like a field. It feels like a mouth closed now, but not finished. The village sleeps that night, or pretends to. The cat returns, but only to perch at the window and stare out into the dark. Your cousin no longer draws, but he begins to whisper to the stones on the windowsill. Your aunt walks the length of the house each hour, murmuring names, some familiar, some not. The first coin in your pouch cools slightly. The second grows warm. The third does nothing. You don't know if that's worse. At dawn, the bell rings. Not the church bell, no one touches that anymore, but a small handbell, faint and distant, coming from the woods beyond the bridge. It rings 3 times, then once, then twice. The pattern means nothing to you, but your mother stiffens when she hears it. She grips your wrist and says, "The pattern's broken. It should have been even." You ask what that means, but she shakes her head, and her eyes do not meet yours. The pattern does not return that day, but the sound lingers in your ears, repeating itself long after it stops. The spiral in the tower grows. You see it days later when the dust leads you back again. The carving is deeper now, more complete, but still not finished. A new line extends from it, reaching toward the door. Beneath the window, a 5th coin rests on a stone. It bears no markings, but it feels heavier than all the others combined. You lift it, and for a moment, your ears ring with a high, clear note, like the after sound of a glass shattered in the distance. You slip it into your pouch. You do not know why. When you leave the tower this time, the path before you splits. The dust no longer runs in a single line, but diverges into 2 trails, one leading back to the village, the other toward the woods beyond the bridge. The fork sits empty, but the air between the 2 paths hums with tension, as though the land itself is waiting for a decision to be made. You turn toward the village, slowly, knowing that sooner or later, the other path will call again. As you walk, you notice that every doorway now bears a new mark, not painted, not carved, but etched faintly by something that did not need hands. A swirl, a line, a crescent, each mark different, and yet part of the same language, one you do not know, but feel pressing against your chest, like a memory, not yours. You arrive home to find your father staring at the floor where the coin from the crow now sits in a bowl of salt. It has split clean down the middle, its two halves slightly curled like petals or claws. You reach for it, but he stops you. "It's not done," he says. "It's just starting." You sit beside the fire, unsure what he means, unsure if you want to. The cat meows once and leaves again. This time, you don't expect it to return. You spend the better part of the morning staring at the bowl of salt on the floor where the split coin rests, like something that broke itself on purpose. It no longer pulses, no longer hums. It just sits inert, but not harmless. And the longer you look at it, the more you begin to wonder if the crack down the middle was always there, and you simply hadn't noticed. Your father doesn't say another word. He leaves it there untouched and walks outside without a coat, arms stiff as though he's made peace with being cold. Your mother begins moving the furniture again. No explanation, just small shifts changing where the chairs sit, placing an empty bucket beside the hearth, pulling the bed away from the wall by exactly the length of a broom handle. No one questions her. She doesn't look anyone in the eye while she works. The cat still hasn't returned, though you find its prints in the ash near the back door, and they lead not outward, but inward, before vanishing completely. You don't speak of it. The village continues to fray in quiet ways. Bread is no longer baked. Buckets left at the well return full, but damp on the outside, as if whatever fills them does so reluctantly. No one speaks in groups. The smith's widow has begun tying bundles of rosemary to her roof, not just above the door, but in a perfect ring along the edge of every tile. A boy from the north lane no longer uses words, only gestures 3 fingers raised, then 1, then 2, then clenched. When asked what it means, he simply repeats it. People begin copying him without knowing why. You avoid the fork in the dust path until the 3rd day. The trail is still there, one side leading home, one toward the woods, both undisturbed, as if no one else sees them, or no one dares. You stand at the divide, the 5th coin heavier in your pocket, the others shifting against it, like stones in a jar, not meant to share space. The village feels distant behind you. Not in miles, but in meaning, like its gravity has weakened. You glance toward the woods and see no movement, no sound, only the long sloping trees holding their silence, like cloaks wrapped too tightly. You take one step in that direction. The wind changes. You stop. Somewhere, a bell rings. Not the handbell, not the church, but something smaller, duller, like the sound of a spoon striking bone. You turn back. That night, you sit near the fire while your cousin arranges 12 pebbles into a perfect circle on the hearth. He does not speak, does not smile, just places each stone slowly, evenly, counting under his breath in a language you don't recognize. When he finishes, he drops a coin in the center, a sixth one unfamiliar. Not round like the others, but hexagonal, with edges worn smooth. He places a thumb on it, closes his eyes, and hums a low tone. The stones begin to vibrate, faintly, not violently, not dramatically, just enough to suggest something is listening. Then he opens his eyes and gathers the stones again. He leaves the coin where it lies. You try to ask him where he found it, but the words feel heavy in your mouth, and you don't try again. In the early hours, you wake to a knocking, not at the door this time, but from beneath the floorboards. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. You sit up, slowly, clutching the pouch with the coins, which now feels warm against your chest. You do not wake the others. You listen. The knocking comes again, not loud, not angry, but unmistakable. It stops after the 3rd sequence. You wait a long time before moving. When you do, you walk outside, drawn by the same pull that led you to the tower before. The dust path has changed. The line that once led to the woods now loops, curling around the well, around the square, and finally spiraling inward to the base of the church, which stands empty. The door is open. Inside, the air smells like burnt linen and moss. The pews are untouched, the altar bare, but along the walls are marks, symbols, scraped into the stone in charcoal or something darker. The same 3 lines, the same spirals, a few new shapes, teeth, maybe, or blades. You follow them to the back, past the curtain. No one used to touch where a ladder leads down into the crypt. It has always been there, but no one ever goes. Not for fear, but because there's never been reason to. Tonight, the air from below smells not of dust and death, but of wet clay and something sweet. You descend slowly. The space below is smaller than you expect. Low ceiling, uneven floor. At the center sits a shallow basin filled with water that doesn't reflect the torchlight properly. Your own face stares back with something missing your eyes, or maybe your shadow. Floating on the surface is a strip of fabric, soaked and curling at the edges, with a coin resting atop it. This one is larger than the others, with an engraving of a doorway, flanked by 2 crooked trees. When you reach for it, the water ripples without your touch. You hesitate, but the pull is stronger than before. You take the coin. It's dry and warm. And now the 7th. You climb back up slowly, your heart heavy and slow, your thoughts thick like sap in winter. Outside, the sky remains unchanged, too still, too quiet. You walk home the coins, pressing harder, now their pulses aligning and misaligning with each step. At your door, you stop. There's a new symbol carved into the wood, one you've never seen jagged, looping almost like a question answered too soon. You press your fingers to it and feel nothing. No hum, no warmth, just wood. Inside, your family stares at the hearth where the bowl of salt is empty. The split coin is gone. Your brother stands in the corner, whispering to something that isn't there. Your mother holds a jar of earth and rocks it gently like a cradle. You sit down and close your eyes, the 7 coins in your lap, the hum rising softly in your ears, now not from them, but from somewhere else, beneath the floor again, or maybe from the sky. You cannot tell. You do not sleep. Not quite. You listen. The wind outside circles once, then stops. The door creaks. A figure stands there, backlit not by moonlight, but by a glow too dim to be light. It holds no lantern. It wears no face. But you recognize it all the same. And in its hand is a pouch that jingles like your own. The figure stands in the doorway without moving, framed by the faint glow that isn't light, but memory, pretending to be. And though no features show on its face, if it even has one, you know, without knowing that it sees, you has always seen you. From the first time the dust line curved toward your steps, to the moment your fingers closed around the first coin. The pouch it carries is identical to yours in size and sound. The faint clink of coins within, almost in rhythm, with your own except slightly out of sync, like an echo returning too early. Your mother does not turn her head. Your brother continues whispering to nothing. Your father does not return from wherever he wandered earlier. You rise without deciding, to your hands closing gently around your pouch as you step forward, slow and steady, not out of fear, but caution, like approaching an animal that knows your name. The figure does not retreat. It steps aside with a quiet shuffle of cloth on stone, allowing you to pass through the doorway and into the hush outside. The air is thick, but dry, the kind of stillness that settles after the last snowfall, or before the first word of a prayer. Behind you, the door remains open, though no sound spills from within. Ahead, the dust path gleams faintly, not from moonlight, but from something under it, like warmth remembered through layers of silence. The figure does not speak, nor gesture. It simply walks the pouch at its side, swinging with the gravity of something that has done this many times before. You follow, and your steps feel lighter now, like the path welcomes the weight you carry. The village has not changed since dusk, but it feels thinner, less solid. Houses seem flatter, their windows darker than should be possible, and the straw circle in the square now appears sunken, as if the earth has begun to draw it inward. The center holds no new object. This time, only the faint trace of ash in the shape of the spiral, now so familiar, you feel its presence even when your eyes are closed. The figure walks through the circle without disturbing a single straw, its feet barely touching the ground. You hesitate, but follow, expecting something to resist a jolt, a sound, a presence. But there's nothing. You pass through the circle as if it were air, though your pouch grows warmer as you cross. You both stop near the well, now fully covered with stones, the edges traced in white chalk that hasn't smudged despite the wind. The figure kneels and sets its pouch down beside the stones. One by one, it removes coins, not 7, not 6, but 11, each placed in a line along the edge of the covering, spaced precisely apart, some old and chipped others, fresh and gleaming. The air grows denser, and you feel your breath slow, as if matching an older rhythm. Something beneath the village, beneath the well, beneath thought itself. The figure turns to you, not with a face, but with its entire shape, and reaches out a hand. You do not flinch. You open your pouch and remove your 7 coins. They pulse faintly in your palm, warm and cold in turns. The figure lifts its own hand, and the air between your fingers, and it begins to shimmer, not like heat, but like ripples across fabric stretched too tight. You do not place your coins on the stone. You do not hand them over. Instead, you let them rest in your palm as the figure lowers its own and the shimmer fades. You sense something not quite like approval, not quite like understanding, but a shared acknowledgement, like two pages read in different languages, but telling the same story. Then the figure gathers its coins again and returns them to its pouch, one by one, with a care that suggests ritual or maybe habit. It stands, turns, walks again. You follow once more, and this time the path leads past the church, its door now sealed with lines of salt and bundles of dried herbs that hang motionless in the air. No bell rings, no voice chants. Inside, the faint hum of stillness remains, as if the building remembers what it once meant to hold faith. Beyond it, the path turns sharply toward the tower. You feel it before you see it, the spiral in the stone, complete now, its edges glowing faintly with a light that does not illuminate, but reveals. The figure stops at the base of the steps and waits. You climb them alone. Inside the tower, smells of stone and warmth like bread that never finished baking. The spiral carved into the floor has grown stretched, twisted, not larger, but deeper, like something bored inward rather than expanded outward. At the center now rests a bowl familiar in shape, identical to the one that once held the milk, but now filled with black sand. The coins in your hand tremble slightly, their warmth steady, their weight shifting, as though trying to decide where to settle. You kneel, not because you are told to, but because it feels like the correct angle to see. The sand does not move, not even when you breathe on it. You lower one coin. It hovers just above the surface. For a moment, then sinks slowly, like dropping into honey, leaving no mark behind. The second coin follows, then the third. Each one sinks slower than the last. Each one resisted, slightly more, until the sixth hesitates entirely, balancing on the surface, like a bead of water on oil. You wait. It shifts, spins, then slips down. You reach for the seventh. As you lift it, you realize your hand is trembling, not from fear, from recognition. This coin is not like the others. It was never like the others. It does not belong in the bowl, and yet it asks to go. You lower it, but before it touches the sand, the door to the tower groans behind you. The figure is gone. In its place stands the girl from the field, the one your brother dreamed. Her white dress is stained now, not with dirt or blood, but with ink, like she walked through stories left unfinished and forgot to wash. Her eyes are closed, but her mouth moves silently, forming words you do not hear, but understand. She steps into the tower slowly, and with each step, the spiral grows colder. You raise the 7th coin. She opens her eyes. They are not unkind, but very old. Her gaze meets yours, and you know this moment has happened before, maybe many times, maybe only once, in a place where time folds like cloth. She speaks now. 3 words. Not in your tongue, not in any tongue, but they ring in your head like bells rung under water. The coin in your hand turns hot, so hot you almost drop it, but you hold on. And then she stops, 1 step before the spiral. 1 word still unspoken. She stands at the edge of the spiral, with the weight of centuries in her stillness, the stained hem of her dress brushing the outer ring, like a whisper almost heard. And though she does not move, the space between you feels tighter now, as though the tower itself has exhaled and forgotten how to draw breath again. The 7th coin burns in your hand, not wildly, not violently, but with the slow persistence of a truth that refuses to be denied, and your fingers curl reflexively around it despite the heat. Her eyes remain fixed on yours open, now unwavering, not glowing or empty, but deep, like stone sunk at the bottom of a well that only ever reflects your face differently each time you peer in. The bowl of black sand at the spiral's heart seems to pulse slightly, not rhythmically, but in reaction, like it listens for the next action, and is prepared to answer whether asked to or not. You consider dropping the coin anyway, just to be done, just to finish what clearly wants finishing. But something stops you, not from within, but from her. Her lips form that final word again, still silent, still breathless. And you realize it's not a word at all, but a shape, the suggestion of a key, not carved, but imagined. You shift the coin slightly, its etched doorway growing hot against your thumb, and for the first time you feel movement from within it, not outside something pressing back against the metal, like a memory trying to return to a place it never left. You take 1 step closer to her, the edge of the spiral, groaning faintly underfoot, though no stone breaks, and the air between you grows heavy with stillness. She does not blink. She does not breathe. She raises her hand. Her palm faces upward, empty, but not asking. Offering. You look at her hand, then at your own, then at the coin again, which now feels not like metal, but like something wrapped in breath and waiting. You hold it over her hand, hesitating. It doesn't feel like giving. It feels like revealing. The moment stretches. Outside the tower, the wind rises sharply and stops just as quickly, and in that second of silence, you hear a sound that isn't a sound, the soft breaking of something long silent, like the creak of a book opening, where the pages have stuck together for too many years. Then softly, she speaks not in words, not aloud, but directly to the space your thoughts have made available. A feeling more than a phrase, a meaning too wide to hold, but too clear to deny. Not an answer, a return. Your fingers open. The coin does not fall. It floats. Just a moment, just above her palm, and then it settles, silent and still. She closes her hand slowly. A breath escapes her lips for the first time. The bowl of sand in the spiral shudders, and the coins within begin to rise, not fully, but slightly, as if remembering themselves. She turns, then not with drama or declaration, but with the inevitability of nightfall, and walks toward the far side of the spiral, where no door exists. With each step, the light in the spiral dims slightly. She walks until the shadows claim her, and the heat in the tower fades to cool stone. Again, you remain standing there, alone, the hum in your pouch, gone the weight of 6 coins, lighter than before the 7th, having been exchanged for something you do not yet understand. You turn toward the door. Outside, the village is lit by a new kind of stillness. Not fear now, not waiting, but quiet realization. In the square, the straw circle has collapsed inward, not trampled, but sunken, as though the earth finally agreed to accept what had hovered above it for too long. The center reveals not dirt, but stone, old and cracked, marked with the same spiral you now carry in your bones. People stand nearby, not speaking, but watching. They seem not surprised, not afraid, but somehow aware that something has passed, not through them, but beside them, brushing their sleeves and skipping their names, but leaving fingerprints just the same. You walk home slowly. The pouch feels colder now, though not empty. The coins shift occasionally, but without purpose. Your cousin sits on the roof legs, dangling over the edge, humming the tune that once belonged to someone else's dream. Your brother leans against the doorframe, his eyes no longer wide, no longer searching. Inside, your mother sleeps at the hearth, arms wrapped around a bundle of dried herbs that have long since crumbled to dust. The cat sits in your chair, tail curled neatly, eyes closed, not sleeping, just waiting. You sit beside it. Neither of you moves. That night, the air inside the house bends ever so slightly, like the world has shifted by half a breath. Your sleep is not restful, but necessary. Your dreams made of flat fields and coin shapes and doors that are never quite closed. You wake at first light, not from sound or need, but because something in the day requires your attention. The church bell rings once. The dust path has changed direction again. And at the center of your table lies a folded cloth tied with thread spun from silver hair, and resting on top is a coin round pale and etched with the shape of a key that has never been turned. You don't touch the cloth right away, not because you're afraid, but because the silence around it is too perfect, as though the coin itself asked for quiet, and the room obliged every crack in the floorboard and creak of the chair holding its breath. The thread spun from silver hair is tied in a simple knot, but one that looks like it remembers being more complicated. Its ends frayed in a way that suggests unraveling and retying more than once, possibly by hands not entirely used to weaving. The coin rests on top with unnatural stillness, pale as bone, lighter than the others, its key symbol facing upward, neither engraved nor raised, but somehow suspended in the surface like an echo caught in glass. You stare at it for a long time, watching the early light from the window strike its edge and fail to cast a shadow, which seems like the sort of thing coins should always do. Eventually, your hand moves slowly, fingers brushing the cloth first, then the coin, which feels neither warm nor cold, but gently neutral, like water that has been still for centuries. You lift the coin and turn it over. There's nothing on the back, just smoothness that offers no friction, no history, no invitation. You place it back and untie the thread, the knot falling apart too easily, as if it had been waiting to give way. Inside the cloth, folded twice, is a piece of parchment creased at the corners and softened with time. There are no words, only a symbol drawn in dark ink. Your symbol, the spiral, but now surrounded by 3 smaller shapes: a key, a door, and a coin. Beneath them is a single mark you cannot read, not because it's in a foreign script, but because it isn't a mark meant for reading. It's meant for remembering. You feel it, rather than see it, as if it stirs something dormant just beneath your skin. You fold the cloth again, slowly, tucking the coin and parchment back inside, and place it in your pouch beside the others. it doesn't sit the same way. The weight has shifted, not increased or decreased, just redistributed. Outside, the bell rings again. 2 chimes. This time, not loud, not hurried, like someone performing a task simply because it must be done. You stand, stretch, and step outside. The morning air is unusually still. The sky is clear, but the sun shines with a dimness you might not have noticed a week ago, before the coins, before the spiral, before your brother stopped dreaming, and your cousin began speaking to stones. The dust path is waiting. It curves from your doorstep in a smooth, confident arc, bypassing the tower, the church, and the square entirely. This is new. It leads instead toward the edge of the village, where the barley fields once whispered, and where now only dry stalks rattle without wind. You follow, not because you've decided to, but because the decision was already made before you knew a choice existed. The ground beneath your boots is firm, the kind of firmness that suggests roots buried deep and unmoving, even if the crops above have long withered. You pass the spot where your brother once dropped the dark coin, the place that felt like a mouth closed too early, and now there is nothing there but a smooth patch of earth with a single white feather sticking upright in the center. It does not move, not even as you pass it. At the field's edge stands a tree you don't remember. It isn't large nor ancient, but tall enough to notice, and strange enough that you know it wasn't there before. Its bark is pale, patterned with faint striations that resemble the key from your coin. Hanging from one low branch is a strip of cloth tied like a ribbon, frayed at one end, identical in texture to the one found on your table. Beneath the tree is a small stone bench, flat and dry, with 3 shallow indentations carved into its surface, each the size of a coin. You sit because it feels expected, not commanded. You remove the pouch and lay it across your knees. The coins inside stir faintly, and for the first time you hear them not ringing or clinking, but a soft harmonic resonance, like tones vibrating from somewhere just out of sync with your ears. You remove 3 coins. The first, the one etched with the 3 lines. The second, the one marked with the backward spiral. And the last, the pale one with the key. You place them in the indentations, one by one, and as you do, each emits a faint hum that fades as the next is set. When all 3 are placed, the bench beneath you warms subtly, and the dust path you followed fades behind you, as though your presence here has fulfilled some requirement of movement. The tree does not move. The ribbon does not flutter, but the air around you seems to shift not dramatically, just enough to suggest a conversation beginning. And then she appears again. Not from the path, not from the tower, but from behind the tree, where no shadow should have hidden her, where no door or space existed to hide within. She does not look at you, not directly. Her eyes scan the bench, the coins, the path, and finally, the sky. She says a word this time, soft and short, in a voice that feels like something written long ago and just now remembered. It is not a name. It is not a command. It is a release. The coins begin to spin, not fast, not uncontrolled, just gently turning in their places, casting tiny reflections onto your lap that shimmer briefly before vanishing. She steps forward and reaches into the folds of her dress, drawing out a second cloth pouch, smaller than yours, worn and thin, tied with no thread at all, but closed anyway, as though the fabric itself knows not to let go. She places it in your hand without looking at you. It is light. It is nearly empty. You open it carefully, and inside is a single item, a stone, small flat, marked with the same doorway that once burned your skin when you held the 7th coin. This mark is older, worn smooth, not freshly cut. She speaks again. Another word, this one a little longer, filled with quiet air and slow breath, and then she steps back. The coins stop spinning. The hum fades. The air stills. The stone in your hand warms briefly, then goes cool. She turns and walks behind the tree again, and though you lean to follow her movement, you see nothing but the same empty space from before. The ribbon falls from the branch and lands gently on the bench. You gather your coins. You place the stone in your pouch. You do not take the ribbon. As you stand, the dust path begins to form again. This time, leading not toward home, not toward the tower or the church, but toward the far horizon, where the hills curve and fade, and where, just faintly, the air glows with a color that is not quite dawn and not quite dusk. You do not hurry as you walk for the dust path that rises gently before you, seems uninterested in speed, and you sense that haste might only unsettle whatever patient force lays it down grain by grain ahead of your feet. The hills in the distance shift slowly as you move closer, then farther, as though uncertain of their place in the landscape, or perhaps testing yours. The air grows softer with each step, not lighter, not cooler, but stripped of the sharp edges. It once held the kind that catch behind the teeth and remind you how much breath can weigh when something is waiting. The pouch at your side feels steadier. Now, its contents no longer pulsing with urgency, but instead moving with the weight of a rhythm established like the ticking of a slow clock or the heartbeat of an old tree. You reach the base of the first hill just as the light above changes. Not to night or day, but to something pale and golden gray, a hue made for libraries or for the inside of dreams, remembered only by scent. The path narrows, curling slightly along the slope, bordered by stones half sunk in the earth. You recognize some of the carvings on them: spirals, lines, teeth, keys, and others that you don't, shapes that suggest motion, even though they lie still. A bird cries somewhere above, but you do not see it. You continue to climb the hill, rising more steeply now, and with it, the hum of your coins returns faint and low, like the vibration of a deep bell heard from beneath the sea. The stone with the door, marking the one from the cloth pouch given by the girl, grows warmer with each step, not burning, just reminding. You do not look back. At the crest of the hill stands a structure, not a tower, not a house, just 4 pillars arranged in a square joined at the top by wooden beams darkened with age. There are no walls, no roof, just space, contained and watched. In the center rests a platform of flat stone, and beside it, a chair carved from a single tree trunk, its arms worn smooth by hands that may not have belonged to this century. You step inside the square, and the hum of the coins stills again. Silence falls in layers, like snow. You sit, because that is what the chair asks, and lay the pouch on your lap. The structure does not react. The stones underfoot do not shift, but something does settle in the air, a density that gathers without form. Then the wind changes direction, not gusting, not loud, but curling around the pillars as if remembering their shape. And then you hear it, a voice low and slow, neither male nor female, neither near nor distant. It speaks not to you, but around you, through the space you inhabit, addressing not your ears, but the part of you that dreams in stillness. 3 paths, 2 opened, 1 hidden. Choose not by knowing, but by remembering. You do not respond. You do not understand. But the words settle into your bones like dew on grass, not soaking, not clinging, just present. You open the pouch and remove the coins again, laying them on the stone at your feet, each one placing itself as if it remembers where it belongs. the coin with the key, the coin with the doorway, the coin with the spiral, the coin with no markings at all, the coin that once burned, the coin that once chilled, and the stone, flat and unassuming its doorway, mark now glowing faintly like embers waiting for breath. They form a rough circle, not perfect, not symmetrical, but whole in a way that only things made slowly can be. The voice speaks again softer, now more rhythm than phrase. One remembers, one forgets, one keeps, one opens, one ends, one calls, one stays. You do not know which is which, but you reach for the stone with the doorway, the newest of them, the one whose warmth persists like a held breath. You lift it. The sky dims slightly, not darker, just deeper. The wind grows still. The air around the structure grows heavy again, as if waiting. And then, from behind you, soft footsteps. Not hurried, not hesitant, just inevitable. You do not turn not at first. The steps continue until they stop just beside the pillar nearest the platform. You turn your head slowly. It is a child, not the girl from the spiral, not the boy from your dreams, but a child you have not seen before, small, quiet, barefoot. They wear a tunic of woven reeds and carry nothing but a ribbon in one hand, pale and fraying, like the one from the tree. They look at you with eyes too old for their face, and then down at the coins. They nod once. You hold out the doorway stone. The child takes it, and then everything shifts, not violently, not instantly, but as if the landscape itself exhales. The pillars seem taller. The platform gleams faintly. The ribbon in the child's hand flutters, once then twists into a spiral on its own, not from wind, but from memory. The child places the stone at the center of the coins and steps back. The air trembles. The sky lightens. The voice returns, this time, directly inside your mind. The gate begins. And beneath the platform, a soft grinding sound begins slow, deliberate, like something long buried, choosing to return. The child steps away, turns, and begins to walk back down the hill. You remain seated, the coins humming again, and the stone in the center pulsing softly like a second sun beneath the earth. You do not follow. You wait. The sound grows louder, and somewhere deep beneath your feet, something clicks. The click beneath your feet doesn't echo, doesn't repeat, and yet it carries the strange weight of finality, like the last notch in a lock sliding into place after centuries of being nearly, almost just about aligned. The coins tremble softly on the stone platform, each one humming a different tone, each tone layered atop the next until the sound becomes a low, living chord that presses gently against your chest, not unpleasant, but deeply certain. The stone with the doorway begins to rotate slowly in place. Though no hand touches it, the etching on its surface glinting in the strange light, like a reflection from water that isn't quite real. You remain seated, your breath steady, your hands resting on your knees, the pouch empty beside you, save for dust and memory. The pillars surrounding you hold firm, though a faint shimmer begins to rise between them, not like smoke, not like heat, but like the transparency of a place that no longer wishes to remain entirely visible. You hear the child's footsteps fading behind you as they descend the hill, unhurried as though their part has been fulfilled, and now something else must take its place. The ribbon they carried is no longer visible. Perhaps they left it, or perhaps it left them. The wind which had gone still as a held breath now returns in a slow spiraling motion, curling around the structure like a storyteller, preparing to speak again after a long pause. You rise, though the chair does not protest your leaving, and you step toward the platform where the stone now spins a little faster. Beneath it, the ground shifts. Not violently, just enough to reveal a seam. Then another. The platform trembles, the stones underfoot, separating along lines so fine they seem etched by thought, more than chisel. And then quietly, respectfully, it begins to open. The center descends, not like a trapdoor, not like a staircase, but more like a stage, lowering into silence, revealing not darkness, but a soft, amber glow that seems to rise from within the earth itself. You peer down and see steps narrow, ancient, worn smooth, spiraling into the lightless, below vanishing into a curve that promises distance, but not depth. You look once more at the coins. They do not move now. They are still content to remain. The stone with the doorway slides gently into a small groove, revealed by the moving platform nestling there as if returning home. You descend. The steps are warm underfoot. The light does not come from torches, nor fire, nor sky, but from the very stone of the walls, which seem to recall sunlight in the same way people recall dreams, imprecisely, but vividly. The air is thick, not with moisture or dust, but with memory, the kind that clings and nudges rather than presses. You descend further. No sound follows. The spiral turns gently, and with each curve, a faint sound emerges. Not a voice, not music, but something in between. Like a song hummed under breath, too old for language. You round the next bend and see at last the floor of the chamber below. It is circular, of course. Everything is. At the center lies a pool, not of water, not of stone, but of shadow. Not dark, not cold, but the kind of shadow that exists when light has learned patience. Around the pool are 7 small pedestals, and on each rests a shape familiar in form, but not in detail. A coin, yes, or the idea of a coin. They are not the ones you carried. They do not hum or pulse. They wait. Between the pedestals are symbols carved into the ground, spirals, keys, doors, blades, and a new one, a circle crossed by a line so thin it could be mistaken for a crack. You step into the room, and the air changes again. The humming from above fades entirely. Your own breath takes on a new rhythm, slower, more deliberate, like you've begun syncing with something that never stopped ticking. As you approach the pool, the coins on the pedestals begin to glow faintly, one after another. Not in sequence, but in relation to your steps, as if recognizing you, not as an intruder, but as something once forgotten, now returned. You do not speak. You do not reach. You simply stand. And then a voice, no longer. The voice from the pillars, but something softer, more intimate, speaks inside your chest. You have carried. You have waited. You have opened. You do not answer. You may look. And so you do. You step to the edge of the pool and peer in. There is no reflection, no ripple, no face. Only the suggestion of movement deep below shapes turning slowly too far away to name. Then something rises, not physically, not visibly, but through your memory, or perhaps your expectation. A vision forms across the pool's surface, not of the past, not of the future, but of possibility. A field, a coin, a choice, and then a figure. The girl again now standing, not in white, but wrapped in the same woven reeds. The child wore her hands empty, her hair long and tangled, and her eyes closed, as though listening to something still approaching. Behind her, the same tower. Before her, the bench and the tree. The field beyond it glows. Then the image fades. The pool clears. The voice again. Not all who carry arrive. Not all who open remember. But all who see may choose. You step back unsure of what the choice is. But the chamber accepts your uncertainty, like an old friend. The coins on the pedestals stop glowing. The pool stills. The path behind you remains open, its spiral staircase still warm. The air hums faintly, not with invitation, but with readiness. And as you turn to ascend once more, your pouch, though empty of weight, feels heavier than before. Not burdened, just full. And behind you, the sound of water dripping begins, though there is no water in sight. And the drops echo upward, like a memory, learning how to become real. You climb the spiral steps without urgency, your feet touching each worn surface with the familiarity of someone who has walked this path before. Not in body, perhaps, but in memory, or in some echo of a decision that has always lingered beneath the skin of the world. The light that greeted you on your descent has dimmed slightly, though it still clings to the stone like breath on glass, and the air grows lighter as you rise, not less dense, but less filled, as though something that once watched has turned to wait instead. The sounds behind you, soft dripping water, faint hums, echoes that might have once been voices, fade into a silence that feels more like listening than absence. The pouch at your side, still light, sways gently with your movement. And though the coins no longer rest within their impressions, remain as if they left behind not objects, but indentations in your time. You reach the top of the stairs and find the platform returned to its original state flat, solid quiet, but now marked faintly with lines that were not there before. They spiral out from the center in thin, nearly invisible etchings, tracing the same path your coins once hummed along, but now etched as part of the stone, like veins beneath skin. The air around the structure is warm, gently shifting, and the sky beyond the hill has changed again. Still the same, not dawn, not dusk, but now tinged with violet at its edges, like the bruise of evening, or the echo of twilight, not yet spoken aloud. You step out from between the pillars and glance back once. The child is nowhere in sight. The ribbon that once fluttered at the tree now lies across the bench, coiled like a sleeping thing. And beside it, a new item, a small flat disc of metal, neither coin nor stone, but something between, marked with the single line through a circle that you saw in the chamber below. You do not touch it, not yet. You turn toward the path that leads down the hill and find it has split again, not in two, but in three. Each trail, indistinct, bordered not by dust or stone, but by a difference in color, one pale gray, one amber, and one a soft, unsettled green. The middle path seems the most familiar, curving toward the square, the tower, the church. The path to the left winds sharply up and around toward the woods that still wait in patient stillness. The rightmost trail disappears quickly behind a gentle rise, leading perhaps to nothing, or perhaps to the place you saw reflected in the pool, a field, a girl, a moment. You take the middle path, not out of certainty, but because your legs carry you, before your thoughts can offer protest. The earth beneath your boots is warmer than before, and the scent in the air has changed no longer. Ash or stone or memory, but something sweet and clean, like moss after rain or paper just removed from the press. The village comes into view slowly, each rooftop returning to sight, like an object submerged in shallow water, distorted first, then clear. The tower remains still. The straw circle in the square has disappeared entirely, replaced now by a ring of worn stone, smooth and sunken, and at its center, a short wooden post capped with something flat and circular. As you approach, you see it is another disc like the one on the bench, but darker, marked with the symbol of a spiral inside a closed loop. Around the ring of stone, 6 small stones have been placed evenly spaced, each one etched with a different symbol. The 7th space remains empty. You do not fill it. Instead, you look up toward the church. Its door, once closed and marked with lines of salt, now stands open, though no one enters or leaves. The bell, unmoved by hand or wind, hangs perfectly still. Yet you hear its note, a low tone not struck, but remembered. You walk slowly to the entrance. Inside, the pews remain where they always were. But the space feels different, wider, softer at the edges. The window above the altar glows though no sun touches it, casting a pale blue light across the stone floor. On the altar lies a single item, a bowl identical to the one that once held the milk, then the sand, then the coin, but now empty and clean, as though its purpose has been fulfilled and yet not finished. You approach the bowl and look inside. There is nothing. Yet your breath catches slightly as you see the faintest glimmer of movement, just a shimmer, like heat above stone. You reach into your pouch and remove the cloth still folded, still holding the final coin with the key. You place the cloth in the bowl. It rests there as though it belongs. The glimmer fades. Behind you, a soft footstep. You turn. Your brother stands in the doorway. He looks different, tired, but calm, his eyes no longer haunted by unspoken names. He says nothing, just nods once. Beside him, your cousin, still silent, still carrying a small pouch of pebbles now arranged in the palm of his hand in a perfect circle. Your mother stands outside, arms folded, her gaze resting on the sky. The cat perches on the windowsill again, tail flicking once slowly, as if writing a letter you won't read until much later. You leave the bowl where it lies. You step past them all out into the square where others have begun to gather, quiet, slow, curious. They do not speak to you. They do not need to. In their faces, you see the same question you now carry. What happens when the spiral completes its turn? When the coin settles? When the path no longer diverges, but bends inward? You walk toward the edge of the village where the dust once circled the well. It is dry now, uncovered. Inside, no water remains, only reflection. Your face, not quite as it was, not quite as it will be. You turn again, not knowing why, and find a new path where none had been. It leads not out, but down toward a place below the village, below memory, where the last coin waits, not in your pouch, not in your hand, but in the space you left behind. You step toward the well without hesitation, though your limbs feel as though they're moving through a thicker kind of air. Now, one not heavier, but simply more intentional, as if the space around you has been patiently waiting for this exact moment to breathe with you. The others in the village do not follow, but their eyes linger, not out of fear or reverence, but with the quiet attention of people who no longer need to be told what matters. The cat on the sill blinks slowly once, twice, then turns to face the opposite direction, as if its part has also concluded. The well itself, once capped, then circled in salt, now open and waiting, shows no water, no depth, only that reflection. Again, the one that does not shift or ripple, even when you lean over the edge. It is your face, yes, but it does not mirror its studies. It waits. And then, without motion, without sound, it beckons. You swing your legs over the edge and begin to descend, not with a rope, not with a ladder, but with the absolute certainty that your feet will find their way down, even if the wall provides no help. The stones are smooth, still warm, familiar now. In the same way, dreams become familiar the longer you remember them. With each step, the light above you fades, not dimming, but folding in on itself like a blanket no longer needed. You descend into quiet, not silence, not stillness, but quiet, of the kind that collects only in places sealed, not by locks, but by forgetting. The air changes. It smells faintly of earth, of parchment, of soot long settled and never disturbed. Your feet touch solid ground, and you pause. There is no room. There is no chamber. There is only a corridor, narrow and smooth, lit by a faint line etched along one wall that glows without casting light. You walk slowly. The path curves. Of course, it curves like everything else now. The glow leads you forward until you arrive at a threshold, not a door, not a gate, but a frame of stone with a spiral etched at its top, and beside it, on a small plinth, rests the final coin. It is not large nor heavy. It is not humming, not warm, not cold. It is simply there waiting. You pick it up, and it turns slightly in your fingers, revealing its mark. Not a spiral, not a door, but an eye open and unblinking, carved with such simplicity it almost vanishes, unless held at just the right angle. You step through the frame, and the air thickens instantly, not suffocating, not oppressive, just full, like stepping into a room where every word ever spoken has been hung in the air and left to ferment. Ahead lies a space shaped like a spiral, unfolded a long, winding passage that turns in gentle arcs leading gradually downward. The glow from the corridor follows you, not as a source of light, but as a suggestion of presence, trailing behind your steps like a companion too polite to walk beside you. Along the walls, symbols begin to appear, not carved, but inked painted, remembered hundreds of them, familiar, and not spirals within spirals, keys turning in loops that end in doors that lead to nothing. You pass each one slowly, and though none move, they seem to shimmer as you pass, not physically, but in the way a name becomes more real once spoken aloud. The spiral ends, not in a chamber, not in a destination, but in a pool. A real one this time. Water so still, it reflects nothing at all, not even the light that led you here. It is round, perfectly, so edged with stone that bears no markings. At its center floats a disk of wood, wide enough to stand on empty, save for a circle carved in its center, matching the coin you now hold. You do not question. You step forward. Your foot touches the surface and finds it firm beneath you, as if water itself has decided to allow this one exception. You stand at the center of the platform and place the coin into the carved recess. It fits with a softness that feels like completion, but not finality. Around you, the pool begins to stir. Not ripple, not churn, just move in the slow, inevitable spiral of something very old waking up. The air shifts. The symbols on the walls shimmer again, and this time you see them not as decorations, but as sentences. You do not read them, not with your eyes, but they settle into you like stories once told and long buried, now rising in the warmth of familiarity. And then, for the first time since the very first coin, the ground itself speaks. It hums, not a voice, not a sound, a vibration that passes through your feet into your bones, into the space behind your eyes, where memory lives. The platform turns slowly, a single rotation, and then the coin at your feet glows softly. The pool darkens, not from shadow, from meaning. Across the surface of the water, images begin to form, not visions, not dreams, but moments. Your village seen from above, the square, the tower, the church, the child walking away from the hill, the girl in the field, now standing at the edge of another well, somewhere far, or else very close. Your mother sleeping with her arms around the cloth you left behind. Your brother kneeling at the spiral etched in salt. Your cousin burying a pebble in a circle of dry leaves. And then something new. A door. Not a symbol. A door. Wooden. Iron-banded. Unassuming. It floats just below the surface of the water, visible now as the pool clears. The platform slows. The coin pulses once faintly, as if asking. You look down. The spiral turns once more behind your eyes. The hum deepens. The door waits. You step forward. The water does not resist. The coin lifts. The image fades. And then, only then, the platform begins to sink. The platform sinks without sound, without ripple, as if the water itself makes room, rather than being displaced, welcoming your descent, not with ceremony, but with the quiet grace of something that has long awaited its turn to respond. The light above fades into a single, colorless hue, not dark, not light, just the in-between shade that belongs to moments, neither beginning nor ending. The coin that lifted now floats beside you, turning slowly, no longer tied to gravity or surface, its eye mark open and unwavering. As the platform lowers deeper, you begin to feel the shift, not in your body, not in the space around you, but in the small corners of thought, usually too quiet to notice. You remember things you had not forgotten, but had not used names, once whispered shapes drawn in the margins of dreams, the weight of footsteps on paths that only ever existed when you walked them. Below the door remains still unmoved by your approach. yet impossibly present its wooden slats held together by bands of blackened metal that shimmer without light. It is set into nothing, just space, just water, just this pool of waiting. But still, it stands upright, certain as if it decided long ago that its place was not to be questioned. The platform slows as it nears, and finally, with a gentle hush, like breath against cloth, it stops just inches above the threshold. You step forward, and the water parts. Not physically, not dramatically. It simply allows your passage, treating your movement as inevitable. The door is close now, close enough to touch. You reach out, and your hand meets wood, not cold, not warm, but steady wood that feels like it has held many hands, like it remembers each one, but speaks of none. There is no handle, no keyhole, just the grain of the wood, marked faintly with spirals, lines, and symbols that seem to shimmer only when you don't look directly at them. You place the palm of your hand at the center, and something inside the door shifts. Not a lock, not a latch, but a weight, a recognition. A long pause follows, and in that pause, the hum returns deeper. Now, more full, threading through your ribs like a rope pulled gently toward something known. Then the door opens, not outward, not inward, but sideways, like a curtain drawn between realities. It reveals not a room, not a space, but a corridor made of light and stone, the same pale blue from the church window, endless, but not eternal, narrow, but without pressure. You step inside. The ground beneath you is smooth, warm, dry. The walls glow faintly with the same patterns seen before. Spirals, keys, eyes, but now they move slightly slow and fluid, as if the story they tell is still unfolding. Your feet carry you forward. You do not measure the distance. Time here does not behave the way it once did. You do not age. You do not remain. You simply continue. Along the walls, names begin to appear. Names you've heard, names you haven't. Names that feel like they belong to everyone and no one. They are not carved. They are not written. They simply are. Ahead, a new chamber waits, not large, not grand, but quiet. At its center stands a table made of stone and light, and upon it rests one object, a mirror. Its surface is still polished, but holds no reflection. Instead, it pulses faintly with the same rhythm the coins once shared, a pulse that now matches your own. You approach and look down. The mirror shows nothing at first, then flickers. A ripple. A vision. Not of you, but of someone else stepping down into the same pool, placing the same coin, touching the same door. Another hand. Another story. Another spiral. The chamber pulses softly. The hum continues. Then the mirror changes again, and now you see the village. Not as it was, as it is. The square filled with people standing in a circle around the newly formed stone ring. The tower empty. The church doors open. The well still dry. A child stands at its edge, again looking down, holding a single coin marked not with a spiral, not with a key, but with the open eye. The mirror dims. You reach forward, not to touch it, but to acknowledge it. The chamber accepts this. The light fades slowly. A door appears behind the mirror, identical to the one you passed closed, but waiting. You walk to it, and it opens at your presence. Beyond it, a staircase leads upward, worn, familiar reel. Stone gives way to air, and as you climb, the sound of the world returns, not loud, not harsh, just present. Wind. Birds. The distant clatter of tools. The hush of water in barrels. You emerge not in the village, not in the tower, not in the church, but in a field. The field. The one from the vision, the one from the coin. You look around and see the bench, the tree, the ribbon fluttering gently on a low branch. The sky is gray with light. You stand still. The pouch at your side rustles faintly, and when you reach inside, there is no coin, but there is something new. A stone, smooth, blank, waiting. You sit on the bench and rest your hand on your knee. The wind stirs the grass. Somewhere nearby, the bell rings once, not in alarm, in arrival. You close your eyes. The spiral continues.